Not every letter brings cheer. Some bring danger. Miss Marple knew this. She stood at the post office. Small errands, nothing unusual. A few letters to send, a jar of jam to deliver. The postmaster smiled. Mr. Giles, his hands full of papers. He paused, reached under the counter. "Courier brought this," he said. "Special delivery. For you. From the Christmas hotel." She looked at him, calm, curious. Christmas hotel. She repeated the name slowly. Mr. Giles nodded. "Very exclusive. 12 guests each year. Private dinner. Not common folk. You are fortunate, Miss Marple." Her eyes narrowed. Fortunate was not the word. She slipped the envelope into her bag. Said nothing. But her mind worked. Why her? Who chose her name? She stepped into the cold street. Stood still for a moment. She had no ties with Upper Danby. No friends there. No relatives. No reason. The invitation did not explain. Just a date. A seat at the table. 12 in total. A closed circle. A set number. Someone wanted her included. That was clear. Her steps carried her home. The letter still in her hand. She set it on the table. Looked at it for a long time. The Christmas hotel. Once an old manor. Now a private place. Lanterns on the driveway. Warm lights in winter. She had heard stories. Wealthy guests. Careful selection. Only chosen few. And now her. She picked up the envelope again. Ran her finger over the seal. Heavy paper. Bold writing. Not village style. Someone had written her name with certainty. Someone had chosen her on purpose. Her thoughts turned. Could it be a mistake? Could another Jane have been meant? She shook her head. No mistake. Not with that handwriting. Not with that precision. Then what reason? She thought of old cases, of patterns, of puzzles. No invitation was ever innocent. Not when it came without reason. She remembered the number again. 12. Always 12. A full table. A missing seat would spoil the order. She was not chosen by chance. She was needed. Needed by whom? For what? Her lips pressed thin. She could decline. Stay in her quiet cottage. Forget the matter. But she would not. Curiosity was her habit. Observation her gift. And the habit would not let her rest. She folded her gloves. Placed the letter beside them. Decision set. She would attend. But not for celebration, not for Christmas cheer, for truth. For the question hidden inside the envelope. Her eyes hardened. If the writer expected a gentle old woman, they would regret it. She had solved worse. She would solve this. She whispered to herself. Someone wants me there. But why? The envelope lay still, but the question grew sharper, and the answer waited at the Christmas hotel. 12 names, 1 table, 1 trap. The motor car stopped at the gates. Miss Marple stepped out, cold air sharp on her face. The Christmas hotel stood ahead, old manor walls, tall windows, wreaths hung with care. The manager waited at the door, tall, thin, charcoal suit. "Alistair Grant," he said with a bow. "Manager, welcome, Miss Marple." She inclined her head, calm, polite. He led her inside. Oak panels, polished floors, fires burning in every hearth. Her eyes moved, not admiring, measuring, watching. He opened a door. "Your suite. Rest. Refresh. Dinner soon." She thanked him, but her mind turned. Who else had arrived? Evening came. Guests gathered in the hall. A dozen cards marked each seat. Names spoken. Faces shown. Lady Eugenia Rutherford. Diamond pin on her collar. Eyes sharp. Smile thin. Mr. Leonard Price. Portly. Jovial laugh. But his eyes never softened. Mrs. Clarice Fenton, brisk, efficient, the type to arrange others. Colonel Arthur Redmine, upright, silver hair, military stiffness, his gaze appraising. Miss Valerie Hope, young, breathless, voice quick, glances nervous. Others spoke little, but their presence filled the room. Marple listened, silent, needles in her lap. Conversations overlapped, sherry in hand. A string quartet low in the corner. Lady Eugenia raised her voice. Christmas belongs among equals. Good breeding spares us the awkwardness of lesser gatherings. The colonel's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Mr. Price smirked. Mrs. Fenton nodded briskly. Miss Hope looked down. Marple's eyes narrowed. One remark, many reactions. She caught the quick glance between Price and Fenton. Not friendly, not open, something hidden. The dinner bell rang. Guests moved toward the great table, chandeliers above, silver polished, a feast laid out, roast goose, ham glazed, chestnuts, sugared plums, each seat fixed, each card precise. Lady Eugenia at the head, commanding as if by right. The others fell into place. Marple took her chair, quiet, watching. Cups filled, crowns pulled from crackers. Laughter hollow, toasts made, glasses raised, smiles shone. But beneath, a stiffness lingered, every gesture measured. She noted how Miss Hope shifted when Price spoke, how Mrs. Fenton seemed intent on the seating itself, how Lady Eugenia's eyes flicked, cold, toward the colonel. Details small, but small things spoke loudest. Dessert waited. Christmas pudding, holly sprig bright on top, brandy poured, flame lit, laughter forced. Marple's knitting needles rested in her lap. She said nothing, but she watched. Every hand, every plate, every look. The hall grew louder, yet her thoughts grew sharper. Something was forming, not yet clear, but present. The evening seemed set, polished, careful. Then Lady Eugenia lifted her glass. Her gaze caught Marple's for a brief second. Sharp, searching, as if she already knew her. The glass lowered. The question lingered. Why had she looked at Marple like that? And what did she already know? Smiles hide sharper things than knives. The guests gathered in the drawing room. Fire lit. Sherry poured. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Lady Eugenia stood tall, diamonds at her throat. Her laugh rang across the room. Mr. Price hovered near the mantel. Drink in hand, his chuckle deep, but his eyes restless. Mrs. Fenton arranged the chairs, adjusted a cushion, directed a servant. Her tone brisk, her presence commanding. Colonel Redmine sat stiffly by the window. He watched, said little, his jaw set. Miss Hope moved from one group to another, breathless, trying to please. But her hands trembled when she held her glass. Miss Marple sat quietly, knitting on her lap. Needles clicked slow, but her eyes missed nothing. Conversations drifted. Weather, villages, traditions. Then Lady Eugenia raised her voice again. Christmas, my friends, belongs with one's equals. Familiar company, good breeding. It spares one the awkwardness of lesser gatherings. The room stilled. Colonel Redmine's mouth pressed tight. His eyes hardened, but he spoke no word. Mr. Price smirked, sipped his drink. Mrs. Fenton's lips curved in a thin smile. Miss Hope's cheeks flushed. Marple saw more. The flicker of discomfort in Miss Hope. The quick exchange of looks between Price and Fenton. A smirk, a nod, a secret shared. The string quartet continued, but the air had shifted. Price leaned toward Mrs. Fenton, whispered. Her hand twitched. She adjusted her brooch too quickly. The colonel glanced their way. disapproval sharp in his stare. Lady Eugenia spoke again, louder. Tradition matters. It sets us apart. Without it, one might as well sit in a common tavern. Miss Hope dropped her glass. It clattered. Sherry spilled across her dress. Her laugh was brittle. Clumsy me. Mrs. Fenton snapped for a cloth, her voice cutting. Mr. Price laughed, too loudly. Spilled wine is luck, they say, though not for the dress. Miss Hope flushed deeper. Her hands shook as she dabbed. Marple's needles stopped for a moment. She looked at the girl, then at the others. Every word was surface. Every glance was deeper. The dinner bell rang, clear, demanding. Mr. Grant, the manager, entered. Dinner is served. His voice calm, his bow precise. The guests rose, slowly. Each, movement measured. Lady Eugenia led the way, her step regal, certain. The others followed. At the door, Mrs. Fenton leaned slightly toward Price. Their shoulders brushed, just enough to be seen. Marple saw it. The Colonel saw it too. His eyes narrowed. Miss Hope lagged behind, her lips pressed tight. She walked as if weighed down. Marple placed her knitting into her bag. She rose. Her gaze swept the room once more. Smiles remained, but edges showed. The careful masks had begun to crack. She followed them to the table. One thought fixed in her mind. These people had not gathered for Christmas alone. They had gathered for something else. And soon, the reason would show itself. One fork, one bite, one silence. The table gleamed. Silver cutlery. Cards marked each seat. 12 places. Lady Eugenia sat at the head, crown from a cracker on her hair. Her chin lifted, her smile thin. Mr. Price chuckled over his drink. Too loud, too forced. Mrs. Fenton corrected a servant, her tone sharp. Colonel Redmine sat upright, his spoon untouched, his eyes moving from guest to guest. Miss Hope sat pale. She pushed her food about the plate, her lips pressed tight. Miss Marple watched, quiet, calm, every glance recorded, every hesitation noted. The feast moved course by course. Goose, ham, chestnuts, laughter forced but present. Price made a joke. Miss Hope laughed nervously. The Colonel did not laugh at all. Lady Eugenia raised her glass often. She made toasts. She demanded attention, but her words carried edges. Tradition, she said. Discipline, that is what separates us. The Colonel's jaw tightened. Mrs. Fenton clapped politely. Marple saw it, saw how the words struck, saw who smiled and who did not. Then came the final course, the Christmas pudding, holly sprig, brandy flame, blue light flickering for a moment. Applause followed, glasses raised. Lady Eugenia's eyes shone. She took her fork, she cut her portion, she lifted it with perfect poise. The room stilled. She coughed. Once, sharp. Her fork dropped, clattered against the china. Her hand flew to her throat. Eyes widened. She swayed, slumped. Colonel Redmine half rose. Price shouted. Mrs. Fenton reached for water. Miss Hope froze, napkin clutched tight. Mr. Grant, the manager, rushed forward. Calm voice. Commands given to staff. Confusion broke across the table. Chairs scraped. Voices clashed. "Brandy," Mrs. Fenton cried. "Doctor," Price muttered. Hope gasped, white as the tablecloth, but Marple sat still, her eyes sharp. She had seen something. She had seen Lady Eugenia's lips move just before the collapse, as if trying to speak. One word, left unfinished. And she saw more. Her glass of mulled wine, untouched, full. The detail fixed itself in her mind. Voices filled the hall. Panic. Orders. Movement. The servants cleared the pudding. Guests shifted. Some stood. Some cried. The body was carried from the table. Covered. Removed. The doctor arrived within the hour, his verdict uncertain. Heart failure, perhaps, or a sudden stroke. Nods followed. Whispers, too. Relief in some faces. But Marple's mind disagreed. This was no failure of the heart, no sudden stroke. It was deliberate, cold, planned, and the person who planned it still sat at that table. She folded her napkin, placed it gently beside her plate, her voice low. This was no accident. She looked around, at each guest, at every shifting eye. Then she leaned back, her gaze sharp as steel. She thought the words but did not speak them aloud. The killer is here, watching, waiting. Easy answers always lie. The doctor stood by the side room, his coat unbuttoned, his bag open, his voice calm. Heart failure, or perhaps a sudden stroke. These things happen. The guests nodded, some in relief, some in fear. Lady Eugenia lay still, face pale, fork marks left on the plate beside her. Price wiped his brow. Tragic, but not unexpected. She was not young. Mrs. Fenton clasped her hands. Yes, sudden, shocking, yet natural. Miss Hope shook her head. No, it didn't look natural. Not at all. Colonel Redmine cleared his throat. Enough. Speculation does not help. Mr. Grant, the manager bowed. The staff will move her with dignity. Chairs scraped. Voices lowered. The group shifted back toward the drawing room. Miss Marple walked last, her eyes sharper than her step. She had seen what others missed. Lady Eugenia's lips had moved. One word, unfinished, and the wine glass at her right hand, untouched, not one sip. If she had collapsed from wine, why was the glass still full? If she had collapsed from food, why had she tried to speak? Marple sat with her knitting, but she did not knit. Her mind arranged the pieces. The pudding, the glass, the attempt to speak. The doctor's voice reached her again. It happened suddenly. A weak heart, a vessel in the brain. It cannot be helped. She did not reply. She had heard such words before. Too neat, too easy. The guests whispered. Each found comfort in the doctor's words. Price muttered, "A sad Christmas. But we must carry on." Mrs. Fenton nodded. Yes, carry on. That is what she would want. Hope trembled. Would she? She hated kindness. The colonel frowned. Enough, girl. Hope fell silent. Marple's gaze moved to each of them. She saw the fear, the calculation, the silence. The manager returned. The body is at rest. Tomorrow the authorities will be informed. For tonight, please return to your rooms. The guests obeyed, one by one. Price muttered under his breath. Bad luck, bad timing. Misses. Fenton touched her brooch. Her fingers lingered. The colonel's boots struck the floor hard, measured, angry. Miss Hope's steps dragged. Marple followed last. She paused by the table, looked once more at the glass. Full, clear, untouched. She whispered to herself. No heart fails at the very moment the pudding arrives. No stroke waits for dessert. She turned, walked to her room, her bag on the chair, her gloves folded, the letter that brought her here lying on the table. She, Saturday hands clasped, her thought sharp. This was no accident. This was murder. And the one who planned it was still inside these walls. Her eyes narrowed. She whispered again. Who chose me? Who brought me here? The silence of the room gave no answer. But the trap was already closing, and the killer was watching. Snow outside, fear inside. The breakfast room felt heavy. Not from food, from silence. Guests entered slowly, one by one. Mrs. Fenton first. Brisk, efficient. Her lips pressed in a thin line. Price next. He hummed, forced cheer, but his eyes darted at the door. Colonel Redmine followed, boots heavy, his face set like stone. Hope drifted in, pale, restless. She rubbed her fingers along the rim of her cup. Last came Miss Marple, quiet, calm, her gaze sharper than anyone realized. The table was set, toast, kippers, marmalade, silver teapot steaming, but the seating had shifted, not as before. Now they clumped in pairs, choosing safety, choosing sides. Mrs. Fenton poured tea for herself, each movement precise. Too precise. Price cracked his egg. Shell broke. His hand shook slightly. The colonel sat at the far end, alone. His spoon idle beside the porridge. Hope broke the silence first. I couldn't sleep, not a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw. She stopped. Her breath caught. Price gave a strange chuckle. Best not to dwell, my dear. The doctor said perhaps. Hope cut in. That isn't the same as certain, is it? The spoon in Fenton's hand clinked hard against her saucer. Speculation does no good. Until authorities decide, we must hold dignity. The colonel looked up. And what will they decide, Mrs. Fenton? Will a vague word satisfy them? The remark froze the room. No one answered. Marple sipped her tea. Her eyes moved from one face to the next. She watched posture, watched small movements. Fenton's shoulders too stiff. Price's hand trembled again at the salt. Hope's lips pressed tight. The colonel's jaw clenched like a soldier before a march. She said nothing, but she filed each detail away. The door opened, steps firm. Mr. Grant entered. Behind him, two men. One square-shouldered, brisk, his gaze sharp. Inspector Barrow. Beside him, a young constable, notebook in hand, nervous. Barrow cleared his throat. I've spoken with the local constable. In light of last night's event, I must keep order. The police will arrive this morning for statements. The guests stiffened. Hope whispered, "You mean we cannot leave?" Barrow's tone clipped. "Not until inquiries finish. You will remain on the grounds." A ripple of unease swept the room. Price muttered, "Perfectly understandable. Rumors mustn't spread." Marple's voice was mild. "Rumors do not wait for permission, Mr. Price. They travel fast." A faint blush crept to his collar. He turned back to his egg. Silence again. Heavy. Measured. Barrow's gaze swept the table. His tone final. "Remain here. Remain calm. All will be questioned." Chairs shifted. No one smiled. Miss Marple folded her napkin. Her thought was cold. The storm had only begun, and the hunt was about to start. The wrong question can save the killer. Inspector Barrow stood in the hall. His boots left wet marks on the floor. His voice clipped. "You will all be spoken to, one by one. Until then, remain where I can find you." The guests nodded, faces pale, hands restless. The first called in was the staff. Quiet maids, nervous footmen. Each gave simple answers. Movements, duties. Nothing bold, nothing certain. Barrow wrote quickly. His pen scratched hard. Then came the guests. Mrs. Fenton first. Brisk, efficient. I was beside Lady Eugenia. I saw nothing unusual. She coughed. She fell. That was all. Barrow narrowed his eyes. "You left the table during the meal?" "No." Her tone clipped. Her, chin high. He let her go. Next came Price. Sweat on his brow. His words too fast. Dinner was fine. She ate. She choked. Terrible shock. Must have been her heart. Barrow's pen paused. You believe it was natural? Of course. His laugh hollow. What else? Price was dismissed. Colonel Redmine entered next. Straight shoulders, hard voice. I saw her collapse. No warning, no cause. But I tell you this, Inspector, that woman had many enemies. She did not make friends easily. Barrow looked up. Enemies among you? The Colonel's jaw tightened. I speak only of her manner. You may draw your own lines. Barrow waved him off. Then came Miss Hope, young, pale. Her eyes darted as she Saturday. The inspector leaned forward. It is said you quarrelled with Lady Eugenia before dinner. Her breath caught. No, not a quarrel. A conversation. A heated one? No. Her voice cracked. She stopped. I was upset, but not with her. Then with whom? Her silence was answer enough. Barrow closed his notebook. You were seen distressed. That is fact. Hope's lips trembled. Heard wrong. Misunderstood. Barrow dismissed her with a curt nod. The others waited in the hall. Their ears strained for fragments. Price muttered to Fenton. The girl is weak. She'll break. Fenton's lips pressed thin. Better her than us. Colonel's eyes narrowed at their exchange. Marple sat in her chair, knitting idle, her gaze on Hope as she returned. The girl's face was pale, her steps unsteady. Hope sat hard. Her hands clutched her lap, her whisper barely audible. He thinks I killed her. Price chuckled low. Perhaps you did. Hope's eyes widened. Her breath quickened. Fenton snapped. Enough. We must keep composure. But her voice shook. The colonel shifted in his seat, his gaze heavy on Hope. Judging, or perhaps pitying. Marple's mind turned. Too soon for certainty, too neat for truth. Barrow's focus had found its target, but a target too easy. Marple folded her hands, her thought quiet. If suspicion stayed here, the real killer was safe. She looked at Hope again. The girl trembled. And Marple knew. Someone had chosen her as the shield. Paper burns slower than truth. The hall was quiet. The tree still glittered with tinsel, gifts unopened at its base. Guests had drifted away after questioning, some to smoke, some to brood, some to whisper in corners. Miss Marple lingered, her step slow, her eyes sharp. She moved past the tree. Past the ornaments, past the boxes wrapped too neatly. Something white caught her eye. Not decoration, not ribbon, a folded square, tucked behind a branch. She reached out. Her fingers lifted it free. Plain paper, no seal, no mark. She unfolded it. 3 words only. We must speak. Her brow furrowed. No name, no signature. No time. She folded it again, slipped it into her bag. Behind her, a voice. Mrs. Fenton. Still admiring the tree, Miss Marple? The older woman turned. Calm, polite. Yes, it is finely arranged. Fenton's eyes were cool, measuring, her smile small. Grant insists on order. He says every branch matters. Marple nodded. Said nothing more. Fenton walked away, steps brisk, shoulders stiff. Marple remained, her mind turning. Who had written the note? Who had hidden it? And who was it meant for? She considered each guest. Eugenia dead, Price too loud, too careless, Fenton precise, too careful, Redmine guarded, Hope frightened, each possible. None certain. She touched her bag, the folded note inside. 3 words. Enough to open a crack. Dinner had been fixed. 12 seats, 12 cards. Yet one had slipped away from order. The note proved it. A secret planned behind the glitter. A servant passed, carrying a tray, his eyes lowered, his step quick. She watched him. Did he know more than he showed? Servants always saw more. Always. She filed it away. Later she would ask, quietly. The hall emptied further. Only Mr. Grant remained. He adjusted a garland, his hand steady, his voice smooth. All must look perfect, he murmured. Marple's voice was mild. Perfection rarely lasts, Mr. Grant. He looked up, his smile faint. True, but it keeps the guests content. She inclined her head, said nothing more. When he left, she opened her bag once more. Looked at the paper again. We must speak. The words were not decoration. They were warning. Warning meant for someone who never arrived, or for someone who did. Her lips pressed tight. If the note was meant for Eugenia, she never answered. If it was meant for another, that person had stayed silent. The difference mattered. The difference could kill again. She placed the note back, closed the clasp. Her thought whispered, this was no random slip. It was a thread, and threads always led somewhere. But where? And to whom? Servants notice what guests forget. The maid entered quietly, tray in hand, eyes lowered. Miss Marple sat near the fire, knitting idle in her lap. She watched the girl's hands, trembling slightly. When the tray was set down, Marple spoke gently. Long night? The girl nodded. Too long, ma'am. None of us slept. Her voice was hushed, afraid of being heard. Marple leaned forward. You served at dinner? The maid swallowed. Yes, ma'am. You saw Lady Eugenia's plate. Her head dipped. I saw her cut the pudding. Saw her lift her fork. Then it happened. Her words trailed off. She shivered. Marple's tone stayed soft. Think carefully. Did you notice anything before? The girl hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the door. Marple lowered her voice. No one else will know you told me. But truth matters, child. Always truth. The maid breathed out. I saw Mrs. Fenton, ma'am, in the pantry, just before the pudding was brought in. Marple's eyes narrowed. Alone? Yes. She held a glass, poured something in. I smelled it. What did you smell? The girl's brow furrowed. Wine, ma'am. Strong, but sharp, not like the others. Sharp? Yes. Bitter almost. She put the glass back on the tray, then left quick. Marple's hands folded. Calm on the surface, mind racing within. The maid whispered faster now. I shouldn't tell you, but I'm frightened. She looked at me, as if daring me to speak. I said nothing, but... Marple touched her arm lightly. You did well. Remember only what you saw, not what you fear. The girl nodded, relief in her eyes. She picked up the empty tray and slipped out. Marple sat back, her gaze thoughtful. Mrs. Fenton in the pantry. A glass poured, a sharp smell, a quick exit. Too deliberate, too neat. Her mind fitted the pieces. Eugenia dead. Her wine untouched, yet a glass had been handled. Marple thought again of the note. We must speak. Hidden behind the tree. Was the note meant for Eugenia, or for someone watching her? If Fenton had placed the poison, why not in the pudding? Why risk the glass? Questions piled. Answers waited. The hall grew noisier. Guests gathered again. Whispers carried. Suspicion spread. Price laughed too loud. We mustn't brood. The inspector will see to it. Hope stared at her hands. He already thinks it was me. Colonel barked. He thinks what evidence shows. Fenton entered then. Calm. Brisk. Her eyes sharp. Marple watched her closely. No tremor. No guilt. Only control. Yet control often cracked. Marple's thought was clear. The maid had seen truth. Truth hidden behind brisk steps and clipped words. Now Marple held it. Quiet, unspoken. But truth was a dangerous thing, and someone in that room would kill to keep it buried. Killers rarely stop at one. The cry came from the library. Sharp, urgent. Guests rushed in. Mr. Price lay slumped in a chair, glass fallen at his side, his face grey, his breath shallow. Mrs. Fenton gasped. "He's fainted." The colonel bent low, checked the pulse. Weak, but steady. Hope clutched the doorframe. "Is he?" The inspector barked. "Quiet. Give him air." Servants hurried. Water. Towels. Price stirred, groaned. His eyes fluttered open. "What happened?" Barrow demanded. Price coughed. I don't know. One moment fine. Next. Dizzy. My throat burned. Barrow lifted the glass, sniffed. His brow furrowed. Wine. But not only wine. Something sharper. He set it down. His jaw tightened. Did anyone see him pour? No one spoke. The silence stretched. Hope shook her head quickly. He poured it himself. I saw him. Fenton added briskly. Yes, he carried his own bottle in. Perhaps too much brandy. Perhaps worse. Barrow's eyes narrowed. You suggest self-inflicted? She shrugged. Who can say? The colonel muttered. The man always drank too freely. Price groaned again. Not suicide. Never. Someone tried. His words broke off. His eyes closed once more. Barrow frowned. Enough. He'll live. But weak. We'll keep him under watch. Hope whispered. You think he poisoned himself? Barrow's voice was firm. It fits the evidence. The glass in his hand. No one else touched it. Marple sat in the corner. Silent. Observing. Her eyes lingered on the glass. The smell sharp. Bitter. Her mind worked. The maid's whisper returned to her memory. Fenton in the pantry. A poured glass. A sharp smell. This matched. Too closely. Yet Fenton's face showed nothing now. Calm. Cool. Efficient. She directed servants to carry Price to his room. Her hands steady. Her voice smooth. Too smooth. The colonel scowled, his stare fixed on Hope. You claim you saw him pour? Then you clear us all. Hope trembled. I only saw his hand on the bottle. Not more. Barrow snapped. Enough. Until we know more, we treat this as his own doing. The man is careless, reckless. Not my concern if he drinks poison as wine. The words silenced the room, but not Marple's thoughts. Self-inflicted? No. Too neat. Too easy. She looked at Fenton, the brisk smile, the efficient order, and she looked at the colonel. His silence too heavy. Her needles clicked once, then stopped. The killer had struck again, and the inspector was looking the wrong way. Marple folded her hands. Quiet, calm, but her eyes were sharp. She whispered to herself, This is no suicide. This is a warning. The next attempt will not fail. Alliances show in glances. The library still smelled of spilt wine. Price had been carried upstairs. Servants whispered in corners. The guests gathered again, faces tense, voices low. Mrs. Fenton broke the silence first. He'll recover. Best we remain calm. Her tone sharp, commanding. Hope shook her head. Recover? He nearly died. You call that calm? Fenton's lips pressed thin. Hysteria helps no one. Hope's eyes filled. She looked away. The colonel stood by the mantel, his hands behind his back, his stare heavy. He nearly died, he said slowly, because someone wished it so. The room froze. Fenton snapped, That is uncalled for. The colonel's eyes narrowed. Is it? Price's absence echoed louder than his voice ever did. Marple sat near the fire, her knitting idle, her gaze steady. She watched the space between words, the lines between gestures. Fenton leaned closer to the colonel. "You should mind your tongue." The colonel gave a dry laugh. "A soldier speaks plain. I say what others hide." Marple saw the flicker then, Fenton's glance toward him. Sharp, warning. Her eyes turned next. Price was gone, yet his presence lingered. His laugh, his bluster, but also his secrets. She looked at Hope. The girl's shoulders shook. Her hand trembled against her cup. The colonel turned toward her. "You should not be here, child. This place is no fit stage for the weak." Hope's face crumpled. "I didn't touch her plate. I didn't touch his glass. Why won't anyone believe me?" Her words broke. Marple's voice was soft. "Because fear clouds truth. But truth waits. It will show." The room stilled again. Mr. Grant entered, his tone smooth. "The inspector asks you remain ready. More questions soon." He bowed, left. The door shut. Fenton spoke briskly. "We must hold our composure. Appearances matter. Rumors spread faster than fact." The colonel snorted. "Appearances. Lady Eugenia is dead. Price poisoned. Shall we polish our shoes and call it custom?" Fenton's eyes flashed. "Enough." The silence cut deep. Marple's eyes noted more. The brush of Fenton's sleeve against the colonel's arm. The way she leaned toward him. Not away. Not enemies. Something else. A tether. A bond. A secret. Hope whispered. "She hated me. She said so. She mocked me. She wanted me out." Fenton snapped. "Do not invent stories." But Hope's voice grew sharper. "I heard her. I wasn't wanted." The colonel muttered under his breath. Just loud enough. "She collected enemies like trophies." Marple heard it. The quiet admission. Not pity. Not defense. Just fact. The fire crackled. No one spoke further. Each looked at another. No trust. No safety. Marple folded her hands. The cracks had begun. The bonds beneath the surface now showed. Her thought was cold. When cracks spread, walls collapse. And someone here was waiting for collapse. Sweet things hide bitter truths. The breakfast table looked full. Toast, butter, porridge. Dishes lined neatly. But one item stood out. A small jar. Quince jelly. Hope frowned. "That wasn't here yesterday." The maid answered softly. "Mrs. Fenton brought it down herself, miss. Said it was special. A gift for the table." Fenton's smile was brisk. "Indeed. My own recipe. Quince always brightens the morning." She spread it on her toast with quick strokes. Price was absent, still weak upstairs, his chair empty. The colonel lifted his spoon but said nothing. Hope stared at the jar, her voice quiet. "Strange gift. Sweet things never last long in this house." Fenton's brow tightened. "You suggest something, child." Hope shrank back, shook her head. Marple reached for the teapot, her hand calm, her eyes steady. She watched carefully. Fenton spread the jelly with her right hand. Quick, controlled. Then she lifted her cup with her left. Smooth, automatic. Marple's eyes narrowed. Yesterday, Fenton had written notes with her right, poured water with her right, corrected a servant with her right. Yet here she lifted her cup with her left. No hesitation. The detail fixed itself in Marple's mind. She stirred her tea. Soft clink, slow rhythm. Barrow entered then, his boots loud, his tone firm. Price recovers. He claims confusion. "I will question him later. For now, remain here." The colonel grunted. "Confusion? Or fear?" Barrow ignored him. His gaze flicked to the jelly. Unusual choice. Fenton smiled. Nothing sinister, only fruit. Her voice smooth, her hand steady. Marple set her cup down. Her needles clicked once, twice, then stopped. The maid shifted by the door, nervous, her eyes wide. She whispered, just loud enough for Marple to hear. She carried that jar yesterday, in and out of the pantry, twice. Marple inclined her head slightly, said nothing. Barrow questioned no further. He left. The room grew tense again. Hope's hands trembled. She spread marmalade instead, avoided the quince. The colonel pushed his plate away untouched. Fenton ate calmly. Toast, jelly, sip of tea, calm as stone, too calm. Marple watched every move. The change of hands, the smoothness too perfect. Left hand, right hand. A detail that betrayed more than words. The others saw only food. She saw method. She saw practice. Fenton glanced across the table. Their eyes met. Marple smiled faintly, almost kind. Fenton's smile returned. Quick, brisk. But, in her eyes, for a flicker, something shifted. Not calm, not control. Something colder, something hidden. Marple folded her napkin. Her thought sharpened. This was no breakfast. This was a game. And Fenton had already shown her hand. The more they hide, the more they show. Inspector Barrow stood in the hall. Notebook open. Voice sharp. Miss Hope again. You quarreled with Lady Eugenia. Witnesses confirm it. Explain yourself. Hope's eyes filled. It wasn't a quarrel. She mocked me. She called me a child. That was all. Barrow's tone cut. And you raised your voice? You left the room? Yes, for a moment, only to breathe. Barrow wrote quickly. Convenient. Enough time for poison. Hope shook her head. No, I touched nothing. Her voice cracked. She pressed her hands to her face. Mrs. Fenton spoke briskly. Inspector, the girl is fragile. She imagines slights. She invents excuses. Surely we waste time. Barrow nodded once. Perhaps. But her absence is fact. Hope trembled. I didn't kill her. Why won't anyone believe me? The colonel muttered. Because you look guilty, girl. Fear paints guilt on the face. Silence followed. Miss Marple spoke then. Mild. Almost casual. But fear is not always guilt, Colonel. Sometimes it is innocence left alone. Barrow frowned. You have an opinion, madam? Marple's needles clicked once. Only an observation. Her eyes turned toward Fenton. Curious, she said softly. You write with your right hand. You pour with your right. Yet this morning you lifted your cup with your left. The room stilled. Fenton's smile froze. Does that matter? Marple's voice stayed mild. Sometimes the smallest things matter most. The colonel raised his brow. What do you suggest? Marple folded her knitting. Nothing yet. Fenton's cheeks flushed faintly. She adjusted her brooch. Too quick, too sharp. Barrow's pen scratched again. Noted. Hope whispered. It isn't me. It isn't. Marple watched her. The girl's hands trembled. Her voice shook. But her eyes carried. Truth. Fear, yes, but not deceit. Fenton's eyes, though. Too still, too steady. Marple leaned back, her voice gentle. Sometimes guilty hands switch when one grows tired of being watched. Fenton's lips parted. You dare. She stopped. She forced a laugh. Ridiculous. The colonel's stare cut through. Ridiculous or revealing? Fenton turned sharply toward him. You think yourself judge? He did not answer. The silence grew heavier. Barrow tapped his pen against the page. Enough. I will draw my own conclusions. but his eyes lingered on Fenton longer than before. Hope breathed out. Shaken, Fenton smoothed her skirt. Her smile returned. Thin, hard. Marple folded her hands. Her thought was cold. The mask had slipped, only for a second. But enough. Enough for her to see the crack. And cracks never close once seen. The pudding returns. Inspector Barrow frowned. You want this repeated? Pointless. Marple's voice was calm. Not pointless, necessary. The truth sits at this table. Let it be seen. Reluctant nods followed. The guests gathered once more. The table set again, silver polished, cards in place. The empty seat at the head loomed large. Servants brought in the pudding. Holly sprig, brandy flame. Hope shivered. Must we? Marple's eyes were steady. Yes. Habit reveals truth. Repetition shows what lies hidden. The pudding was cut, portions served, glasses filled. Marple's knitting lay folded, her gaze sharp. She spoke clearly. Lady Eugenia did not die from chance, nor from her heart. She died from poison, and that poison hid in sweetness. Gasps rippled. Fenton scoffed. Absurd. Marple ignored her. Quince jelly, strong enough to mask bitter taste, placed where she alone would take it. The colonel's brow furrowed. You're certain? Yes. I saw the jar appear only after. The maid saw it carried from pantry. Twice. By Mrs. Fenton. Fenton's laugh was quick. Too quick. Quince's. Harmless. Marple's voice cut gently. Not when mixed. Not when chosen with care. One taste was enough. Inspector Barrow leaned forward, his jaw set. And the attempt on price? Marple nodded. The same method. A glass tampered in the pantry. Bitter scent. He lived, but barely. It was no accident. The guests stared. Hope's eyes widened. Then it wasn't me. It was never me. Tears slid down her cheeks. Fenton's face stiffened. This is slander. Dangerous slander. Marple's gaze held hers. Then explain why you write with your right hand, yet lifted your cup with your left. Small habits betray big lies. The room froze. Fenton's hand twitched. Her lips parted. The colonel's voice broke the silence. Quiet. Heavy. Enough, Clarice. She has seen it. Gasps again. All eyes turned. Hope whispered. Clarice? Mrs. Fenton's face drained of color. The colonel's eyes closed briefly. You cannot hold it now. Barrow slammed his hand on the table. So it was you. Admit it. Fenton's chest rose fast, her voice sharp. I did what I had to. She would have ruined me. Marple leaned forward. And so you killed her? Fenton's silence was the answer. Barrow signaled the constable, but Marple's thought remained cold. The confession was close, yet one thread still lay hidden, and she knew it would unravel before the night was done. Silence cracks louder than words. Inspector Barrow's hand struck the table. Speak. Now. All eyes turned to Fenton, her face pale, her lips tight, her hands clenched against her skirt. For a moment she held firm. Then the mask slipped. Her voice cut low. Yes, I gave it to her. The jelly. Only one spoonful. Gasps echoed through the room. Hope covered her mouth. You... Fenton raised her hand. Be quiet, child. You know nothing. Barrow leaned forward. You admit it? She straightened. Her words spilled fast. She threatened me. Lady Eugenia, she had papers, letters. She said she would show them, said she would disgrace me, said I was unfit to sit at her table. Her breath shook. I could not allow it. Not again. Not after everything I built. The colonel's voice rumbled. Clarice. Her eyes turned to him. Fierce. You knew what she held over me. You knew her malice. He nodded slowly. Yes, but silence is not guilt. I kept her secrets, not yours. Fenton's laugh was bitter. And look where that silence led. She mocked me, called me a thief, a fraud. I stopped her tongue before she could finish. Barrow's jaw tightened. And Price? You tried again. She looked away. He guessed too much. He saw me with the jelly. He whispered. I silenced him too, but I failed. Hope shook her head. Failed? You nearly killed him. Fenton snapped. He was nothing. A loud fool. His ruin meant little. The room turned cold. Barrow stood. Enough. You are under arrest for the murder of Lady Eugenia Rutherford and the attempted murder of Leonard Price. The constable stepped forward, shackles ready. Fenton's body stiffened. She did not resist, her chin lifted, her voice defiant. Let them judge me. I do not repent. She deserved it. She had destroyed too many lives. I only struck first. The colonel's head bowed. You struck wrong, Clarice. You struck without honor. Fenton's laugh rang harsh. Honor? Honor does not save the ruined. The constable clasped her wrists. The chains rattled. Marple's eyes watched. Calm. Steady. The inspector nodded once. Take her. Fenton walked out. Her steps steady. Her face hard. The door closed. Silence remained. Hope exhaled. Shaky. It's over. Marple's needles clicked once. She looked at the girl. Not yet. Hope's eyes widened. But she confessed. Marple's gaze sharpened. Yes, to her crime, but not to every secret. One still lies hidden. The colonel looked up, his jaw clenched. Barrow frowned. What do? You mean? Marple's voice was soft. This game had more than one hand, and not all truths are spoken. The room stilled. The trap was closed. Yet another thread waited. Marple folded her knitting, her thought cold. The night was not finished, and neither was the truth.